Beneath the gilded facade and the persistent SF fog, something restless remains. Not just the chill of the Pacific, but the cold, hard memory of mass death and buried malice. Alcatraz. The Presidio, they're calling, "Welcome to the top 15 haunted places in San Francisco." Alcatraz Island, San Francisco. The ferry cuts a silent, black wake across the frigid bay, depositing the last tour group onto the rock just as the infamous San Francisco fog begins its slow, suffocating crawl over the walls of Alcatraz. It is a place saturated with despair, a fortress built not of granite, but of forgotten screams and the gnawing solitude of the nation's most notorious prisoners. When the iron gates clang shut, sealing the handful of guards and researchers inside for the night, the true residents of the rock awaken. Cell Block D, nicknamed the Hole, served as the institution's disciplinary unit, a subterranean oubliette where men were held in absolute darkness until they often lost their minds. The legend among old correctional officers persists. One inmate, locked within cell 14D, was heard screaming for hours one night, claiming a creature with glowing eyes was attacking him. When the door was finally opened the next morning, the man was dead, his throat bruised, and the autopsy inconclusive. Today, visitors often report drastic temperature drops in that specific cell, accompanied by the distinct, sickening odor of sulfur and ozone. The most visceral terror, however, centers on the main corridors of B and C blocks. Guards often document phantom footsteps echoing down the catwalks long after lockdown, and the chilling rattle of keys, the sound of an unseen entity performing a perpetual, futile count. Researchers conducting late-night acoustic surveys have repeatedly captured disembodied whispers in antique slang, often identified as threats or desperate pleas for light. The residual psychic energy here is overwhelming, a constant, low-frequency hum of malevolence and confinement. As the foghorn moans its warning across the water, the ultimate terror is felt in the shower room. A momentary flash of light reveals nothing, yet a presence remains. It is the overwhelming sensation of being watched by hundreds of eyes that hate you, belonging to men who died dreaming of freedom but remain eternally shackled to the cold, unforgiving stone of Alcatraz Island. They are still here, and they always will be. 2. Queen Anne Hotel, San Francisco. The fog that perpetually chokes Nob Hill often carries a dense, clinging cold. But within the confines of the Queen Anne Hotel, the chill is something far more personal. It seeps not from the windows, but from the polished oak and the heavy, Victorian drapery, an echo of a time that refuses to pass. Room 410, in particular, is an archive of spectral sadness, a space where the air vibrates with an unresolved tragedy dating back to 1890. The Queen Anne was originally Miss Mary Lake's School for Girls, an exclusive finishing academy. When the school failed, Mary Lake, the strict, proprietary headmistress, was forced to sell the building she considered her own. Legend holds that Mary never truly left. She was so deeply intertwined with the structure that her spirit remained anchored to the 4th floor, the former headmistress's suite. Unable or unwilling to relinquish control over her beloved institution, staff and guests now recognize her presence as a form of spectral supervision. Mary Lake's haunting is characterized by a precise, almost domestic malevolence. Guests in room 410 often wake to find their luggage unpacked and clothing meticulously folded, sometimes rearranged on the antique dresser. In the early morning hours, blankets are gently pulled from sleeping occupants, not roughly, but with the cool, deliberate touch of a governess ensuring proper comportment. The faint scent of lavender, a perfume favored by Victorian gentlewomen, will sometimes precede the manifestation of a tall, severe shadow observed gliding down the 4th floor hallway. The hotel remains stunningly preserved, a testament to its history, yet the meticulous attention to detail is unsettling. To stay at the Queen Anne is to submit to the enduring, cold scrutiny of Mary Lake. Her spirit doesn't seek vengeance, she seeks perfection. And in that enforced, silent order lies a terror more profound than screams the claustrophobic realization that you are perpetually an unsatisfactory student in the sternest of spectral classrooms. 3. Palace Hotel, San Francisco. The Palace Hotel, a bastion of San Francisco's Gilded Age excess, cloaks its history in blinding opulence. Its iconic glass-domed garden court, though dazzling, seems to trap the sonic echoes of a century of grand balls, seismic shocks, and hidden tragedies. It is a place of inescapable gravity, and some believe of inescapable souls bound to the lavish decadence they could not escape in life. The hotel is a monument rebuilt following the catastrophic 1906 earthquake. Yet the most persistent hauntings often relate to emotional residue from the original structure. The central legend revolves around the bitter public scandal of Senator William Sharon and his estranged wife, Sarah Althea Hill. In the late 1800s, their tumultuous relationship and complex legal battles reached a fever pitch within the hotel's opulent walls, establishing a locus of profound, internalized despair. When a life ends violently or in great public shame within such concentrated luxury, the resulting spiritual energy appears corrosive and lingering. The manifestations here are rarely theatrical. Instead, they are vestiges of profound ruin. Guests and staff frequently report intense, localized cold spots near the former site of the grand staircase landing, a chill that defies the hotel's modern climate control. More chillingly, the phantom sound of a woman weeping, faint and almost drowned out by the modern bustle, is occasionally heard in the upper corridors, often accompanied by the distinct smell of expensive, century-old perfume. One documented incident involves a security guard who witnessed a translucent shadow, a woman in period dress, dissipating directly into the wall of an unoccupied suite near the 7th floor, the same level where staff routinely feel the distinct, unsettling sensation of being intently observed. The Palace Hotel does not host playful spirits. It retains the heavy, judgmental silence of Victorian tragedy, a sobering reminder that even the most extravagant luxury could not insulate the spirit from absolute public ruin. The gold may be polished daily, but the shadows in the garden court remain immovably cold. 4. Fairmont San Francisco, San Francisco. The Fairmont San Francisco stands as a marble monument atop Nob Hill, a structure of defiant opulence that casts a long shadow over the city's chaotic history. While other downtown buildings crumbled into ash during the 1906 earthquake and fire, the Fairmont, damaged but structurally sound, became a symbol of San Francisco's resilience. This grand, gilded cage, however, may have trapped more than just Gilded Age ambition within its walls. The initial trauma of the city's collapse is often cited by paranormal researchers as the root of the hotel's residual energy, a psychic echo of the catastrophe that lingers long after the rebuilding. This elegant history masks a deep current of unease, particularly concerning the elite who perished nearby or those who met more discreet ends in the relative sanctuary of the newly reopened structure. Witness accounts consistently describe a pervasive, crushing coldness in the hallways of the uppermost floors, particularly late at night, often preceding the sighting of a silent, slender figure in Edwardian formal wear. This apparition is believed by some to be a frustrated businessman or a society matriarch who perished either in the immediate aftermath of the disaster or through a subsequent hushed-up tragedy within the newly reopened hotel. Staff frequently report objects moving within unoccupied suites, and the distinct sound of antique elevator machinery starting and stopping on floors that housekeeping has verified as empty, only for the car to contain nothing but the stale, chill air of the past. These are not benevolent remnants. They are demanding presences, The most unsettling phenomena often occur near the historic rear stairwells, where the scent of burnt dust and aged perfume occasionally wafts through the modern air conditioning. One recent incident involved a guest who reported being locked out of their room by an internal force, hearing what sounded like heavy, exasperated sighing from the other side of the door before the handle violently jiggled and then ceased. When security finally accessed the room, the internal latch was fully engaged, but the suite was completely empty. The Fairmont does not house mere memories. It hosts entities that are actively annoyed by the passage of time and the intrusion of the living. They are the city's forgotten elite, trapped perpetually in their luxury, eternally waiting for a service that will never arrive. 5. San Francisco Art Institute, San Francisco. The San Francisco Art Institute campus, particularly the main Chestnut Street structure designed in the Spanish colonial style, has always carried the scent of turpentine and old dread. Its stucco walls and dark, exposed beams hide a century and a half of intense, often desperate artistic ambition. The air in the narrow, echoing hallways is heavy, less with history than with residue, the emotional spillage of thousands of students who poured their souls, and sometimes their sanity, into the concrete during all-night crits and marathon sessions. The central legend often points specifically to the iconic Tower Studio, where the light is the best and the shadow is the deepest. A student in the 1920s, rumored to be a promising young sculptor named Elias, allegedly immolated his entire life's work and then himself after receiving a catastrophic, unrecoverable critique of his final pieces. He left behind a profound, permeating sense of creative despair, a haunting that is less malevolent and more eternally frustrated, defined entirely by catastrophic artistic block. Security personnel consistently report the distinct, sharp sound of wet clay striking the concrete floor near the ceramics wing when the building is entirely locked down, often followed by a ragged, wet sigh emanating from the vacant studios near the mezzanine. Elias's psychic influence is most acutely felt when student deadlines loom, manifesting as a pervasive, clammy coldness in the studio areas on the third floor. Digital cameras set up to monitor the empty hallways have captured fleeting heat signature anomalies shaped like a slumped figure near the kilns and the large loading dock. More disturbing are the instances where still wet canvases are found inexplicably and brutally slashed, not with a sharp blade, but with the dull, imprecise violence of a blunt tool, reflecting the spectral anger of an artist consumed by failure. The SFAI ghost is not a specter seeking vengeance, but a monument to unfulfilled potential. It is the lingering, chilling proof that art school can demand far more than just tuition. Sometimes it demands the soul. Even now, nearly a century after his death, Elias is still failing, and the building echoes with his silent, frustrated scream. Six. Fort Point National Historic Site, San Francisco. The fog is a cold, suffocating blanket that clings to the brick arches of Fort Point, muffling the groan of the Golden Gate Bridge far above. Built just before the Civil War, this sentinel structure, nestled beneath the colossal modern marvel, feels like a tomb trapped between two eras. The air here carries the damp, metallic scent of the bay and something else, a persistent, stale aroma of gunpowder and fear. Local legend, often dismissed by rangers during the daylight tours, speaks of Corporal Elias Thorne, a sentry stationed here in 1863. Thorne was reportedly executed for desertion, though his defenders swore he was merely lost in the dense, sudden fog banks common to the headlands. Before the firing squad raised their rifles, Thorne cursed the fort, vowing to remain until the iron casemates crumbled to dust. His spirit, the story goes, never found its way across the water. Visitors and maintenance crews alike have documented the unsettling remnants of Thorne's presence. In the lower casemates, far from the light, the faint, repetitive scrape of hobnail boots is heard on the brick floors, a sound that stops abruptly, just beyond the listener's periphery, More chilling are the thermal anomalies. Equipment has registered sharp, localized drops in temperature, sometimes accompanied by the fleeting, unmistakable scent of mildewed wool and cheap tobacco. Security cameras have, on rare occasion, captured a tall, gaunt shadow that strides purposefully across the parade ground before dissolving into the nearest architectural shadow. To stand inside Fort Point at midnight, when the Pacific wind howls through the cannon openings, is to understand that Thorne's curse holds true. The Phantom Corporal patrols his post eternally, a silent, furious warden of the bay. If you are very unlucky, you might hear a whispered challenge echoing from the second tier, a gruff demand for the password from a soldier who's been dead for over a century, standing watch beneath the bridge that casts a perpetual shadow over his restless grave. Seven, Sutro Baths, San Francisco. The air at Sutro Baths is never still, thick with salt mist and the sound of the Pacific chewing away at concrete foundations. Below the cliffside ruins, the tide pools reflect the overcast sky like dead eyes. These massive, crumbling foundations, once the largest indoor swimming establishment in the world, feel less like a historic landmark and more like a mausoleum perpetually washed by the sea. Tourists come for the view, researchers come for the history. But those who linger understand the site holds something heavier than structural decay, a psychic residue clinging to the tide line. Built in the 1890s by eccentric millionaire Adolf Sutro, the complex was a cathedral of recreation, a glass-domed marvel featuring 7 pools fed by the ocean. Its decline was slow and agonizing until 1966, when the entire structure was consumed by a catastrophic, devastating fire. The official record attributes the blaze to arson. Local legend, however, insists that the trapped spirits of those who met untimely ends in the freezing pools, or those who vanished into the treacherous access tunnels, were finally released by the inferno, only to become permanently attached to the skeletal ruins that remain today. Documented phenomena center primarily around the deep recesses of the old pump house and the shadowy coastal caves integrated into the structure. Witnesses consistently report localized, profound drops in temperature, often accompanied by the distinct smell of wet ash and ozone. Security personnel and late-night photographers speak of hearing distinct, echoing shouts of panic followed by unnervingly high-pitched, mocking laughter emanating from areas that are physically inaccessible. Most chilling are the reports of fleeting, translucent figures seen in the upper alcoves around 3:00 a.m., appearing as dark shapes against the dense fog, resembling observers watching a spectacle long finished. The danger at Sutro is not just the unstable footing or the unpredictable tides, but the permanent sense of being monitored by entities trapped between the salt spray and the memory of fire. When the fog rolls in thick from the Golden Gate, the ruins become less a place of human history and more a stage for recurring tragedy. A cold, echoing space where the screams of a panicked crowd will never truly fade away. Eight, Haas-Lilienthal House, San Francisco. The gray, persistent San Francisco fog clings to the gingerbread trim of the Haas-Lilienthal House, a surviving monument to 19th century Pacific Heights wealth. Its steep gables and intricate woodwork feel less like architecture and more like a massive, brooding relic. Forever trapped in the gaslight era, stepping over the threshold is not merely entering a museum. It is intruding upon a perfectly preserved state of dread. The air inside is thick, heavy with the scent of aged redwood and something indefinably colder, a silence that seems to actively absorb all sound. Built in 1886, the house famously withstood the 1906 devastation, untouched by the flames that consumed the city below. This structural endurance mirrors a spiritual persistence. While no violent tragedy defines the residence, the folklore centers on the Lilienthal family matriarchs and the rigid adherence to societal norms that characterize their lives. The persistent haunting is subtle and proprietary, an atmosphere of ownership that permeates the floorboards and heavy draperies. Tour guides and docents frequently report a pervasive sense of observation, particularly near the master bedroom suite and the shadowed confines of the servant staircase, where the temperature reliably drops 15 degrees below the ambient heat. Irrespective of the season or external conditions, the most documented phenomena involve the grand central staircase, where visitors frequently hear the unmistakable creak of footsteps ascending when the house is confirmed empty. Furthermore, distinct sensory manifestations plague the staff. The overwhelming momentary scent of lavender sachet near the formal parlor, followed instantly by the sound of keys jangling just out of sight. It is a haunting of eternal maintenance. The ghost is not malicious, merely fastidious and immovably present. To stand in the drawing room as dusk approaches is to understand that the Lilienthal family never truly vacated. They merely retired deeper into the heavy velvet and dark mahogany, waiting to pass silent judgment on any who dare disturb the immaculate, oppressive silence of their preserved domain. Nine. USS Pampanito, San Francisco. The fog rolling off the bay seems to cling to the hull of the USS Pampanito, a heavy, cold shroud draped over steel that once navigated the brutal depths of the Pacific, moored permanently at Pier 45. She is a silent, cramped tomb during the hours the tourists vanish. This museum of war holds the psychic residue of months spent submerged, a pressure cooker of fear, sweat, and diesel, where men lived inches from certain death. Their survival depended on airtight discipline and luck, though officially spared the loss of its own crew during combat patrols. The submarine carries the collective weight of its grim mission and the intense psychological strain endemic to the silent service. Curators and overnight security staff report that the residual energy of extreme stress never truly dissipates. The most persistent, unnerving activity centers around the forward torpedo room and the engine compartments, the two areas demanding maximum vigilance during wartime. Here, the air often thickens perceptibly, dropping temperature even on the warmest San Francisco night, sometimes accompanied by the faint, non-existent smell of burning insulation. Security logs detail multiple instances of heavy, deliberate footsteps moving across the perforated metal decking when the submarine is secured and empty, a sound too substantial to be settling steel or shifting water. Tools, meticulously stored and tagged before closing, are often found repositioned, sometimes resting precariously on gauges or dials, as if hastily dropped mid-repair by an unseen hand. Visitors have often described a sudden, overwhelming feeling of vertigo and claustrophobia, sensations that intensify acutely near the bunks and the tiny mess hall. But the most terrifying encounters involve physical presence. Several maintenance workers have described feeling a cold, firm hand pressed down briefly on their shoulder when working alone in the stern. A momentary, weighty assurance followed by an immediate, terrifying realization that they are the only breathing person for 50 yards. The Pampanito is a perfect, preserved time capsule, meaning the men who served her are still serving, perpetually submerged in the dark waters of memory, still fighting the ghost of the Pacific War. Hotel Whitcomb, San Francisco. The Hotel Whitcomb, situated prominently near San Francisco's Market Street, possesses a history grander and more unsettling than its current role as a modern lodging implies. This magnificent Beaux-Arts structure served as the city's temporary city hall following the devastating 1906 earthquake, a brief but intense period of civic chaos and political maneuvering. Beneath the polished marble and heavy, opulent draperies resides a charged, pervasive coldness, a residual energy from a time when the building was the epicenter of panicked reconstruction and desperate ambition. Guests often describe the older wings as having an unnatural density, where silence is frequently punctuated by sounds that defy logical origin, particularly in the deep service corridors. The central legend concerns a powerful, yet disgraced, city official from the 1910s, rumored to have faced a crippling professional scandal. He allegedly took his own life within the Whitcomb's walls, just before the municipal government relocated to its new permanent home. This entity, meticulously dressed and intensely territorial, never vacated his post. He is a spirit bound not by personal sorrow, but by the ruin of his career, forever tied to the administrative ambitions and failures that defined the building's time as the seat of San Francisco's power. The official's influence is primarily felt on the administrative 10th floor. Housekeeping staff consistently report profound, localized drops in temperature, regardless of the heating system, and often find objects violently rearranged or even hurled across unoccupied rooms, specifically heavy ledgers, files, and antiquated brass pens. The most disturbing reports cluster around room 1021, believed to have been an impromptu office or private meeting space. Guests have been physically jostled awake in the dead of night, reporting the sharp, distinct odor of aged pipe tobacco, preceding the sensation of an unseen force pressing down on their chests, accompanied by faint, frustrated mutterings. For the Hotel Whitcomb, the past is an active, malevolent resident. While the building continues to cater to modern travelers, the spectral civil servant remains fixed in his historical moment of disgrace, perpetually conducting a silent, angry audit of the living who dare trespass upon his forgotten dominion. Hotel Majestic, San Francisco. The Hotel Majestic stands in quiet, sophisticated contrast to the modern sprawl of San Francisco. Built in 1902, before the Great Fire, its Edwardian elegance seems perpetually shrouded in the fog that creeps up from the bay. This longevity, however, carries a deep spectral residue, largely attributed to one notorious long-term resident following the devastation of the 1906 earthquake. When the hotel narrowly escaped destruction, a woman known only as Lady Agnes is said to have retreated entirely to her fourth-floor suite. Having lost her husband and her entire estate in the fires that followed the quake, she refused to leave the building, maintaining a perpetual vigil by the window, overlooking the wreckage, until her quiet death weeks later. Room 407. Her former sanctuary has subsequently become the epicenter of the building's paranormal activity. Guests consistently report a profound drop in temperature within the room, often accompanied by the distinct, cloying scent of violet-based perfume, even immediately following deep cleaning. Housekeeping staff are particularly uneasy, citing numerous instances where personal items belonging to Lady Agnes, a silver hairbrush, or a faded lace shawl, are found neatly placed on the bedside table, objects the hotel insists were removed decades ago. More chilling are the auditory phenomena. Late at night, the mournful, skilled notes of a grand piano have been heard, drifting down the hallway from the fourth floor. Despite the fact that the hotel's antique Bechstein on the main floor has been locked and covered for years, the most convincing accounts involve direct observation. Security footage, often discounted as light refraction or dust motes, occasionally captures the fleeting image of a slender, high-collared woman standing motionless near the fourth-floor windows. She never turns her face, only gazing out onto the city that took everything from her. Hotel management maintains a discreet silence regarding the persistent claims, yet those who stay on the upper floors admit to an oppressive feeling of scrutiny, as if their every movement is observed. Lady Agnes, it seems, is not merely haunting the Majestic. She is still waiting within its gilded cage, an eternal, sorrowful monument to the city's lost Gilded Age. Curran Theatre, San Francisco. The velvet and gilt of the Curran Theatre, resting on Geary Street, masks a deep, cold silence that settles after the final curtain falls. Built in 1922, the grand structure holds the echoes of countless standing ovations, but also the despair of those whose dreams failed within its ornate walls. The most persistent legend concerns the infamous 1933 run of a doomed dramatic production. Agnes, an ambitious, yet consistently overlooked understudy, was reportedly found dead in the fly space high above the stage. A suspicious accident that authorities quickly dismissed as a tragic fall during a rehearsal rigging check. Stagehands who worked that season whispered that Agnes's corrosive envy of the leading lady had been palpable, a desperate energy that lingered even after her death. Today, Agnes refuses to leave the spotlights she was denied in life. Her presence is most keenly felt in the upper reaches of the house, particularly near the fly rail where she perished. Technicians frequently report inexplicable, sharp drops in temperature, often accompanied by the distinct smell of cheap gardenia perfume that Agnes favored. During late-night focus sessions, lighting cues sometimes misfire violently, dimming and flickering entirely contrary to the board's programming. More unsettling are the auditory phenomena, a quiet, scornful sigh often heard specifically over the headset circuit just before a cue is missed, almost as if she is sabotaging the living cast out of professional spite. The most chilling sightings occur in dressing room 12, traditionally reserved for the main star of any production. Mirrors frequently show a brief, fleeting reflection of a pale, resentful woman standing directly behind the living occupant, her eyes locked on the mirror, studying their success with palpable malice. The veteran staff advises all newcomers, never boast about a good show within the theater's confines, and never, under any circumstance, stand alone on the darkened stage and utter the name Agnes aloud. The Curran demands perfection and holds on to the failures, ensuring that the applause for the living is always shared with a spectral, bitter cast member who still believes the role belongs to her, forever waiting in the wings of the empty house. San Francisco City Hall, San Francisco. The Great Rotunda of San Francisco City Hall is a cathedral of civic pride, dominated by its vast marble surfaces and towering 307-foot dome. Yet, when the evening light fails and the crowds dissipate, the echoes of history deepen, reflecting not just governance and celebration, but profound, sudden trauma. The vast Beaux-Arts structure, rebuilt for the ages following the 1906 earthquake, holds sorrow as palpable as the fog that often swallows the building whole. The most indelible tragedy occurred on November 27th, 1978. On that day, former Supervisor Dan White entered the building, bypassing security, and fatally shot Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. The structure instantly became a tomb for political idealism and a nexus for abrupt, violent despair. While the official chambers were eventually renovated and the building's function continued, the event left an undeniable energetic scar, a concentration of dread and residual violence focused primarily on the second floor and its immediate corridors. Reports from nocturnal security personnel and early morning custodians consistently cite unexplained phenomena around the area leading to the former mayor's office. Room 200, cold spots defying the building's climate control are common, often accompanied by a sudden, intense feeling of panic or deep, immobilizing sadness. Witnesses have reported hearing residual sonic disturbances sharp, distinct shouts, or the clear sound of doors slamming in completely locked corridors. More disturbing are the claims of shadowy, indistinct figures, briefly glimpsed near the massive marble staircase, and, on rare occasions, muffled, hurried footsteps that abruptly fade away down the long, empty halls, as if someone is desperately fleeing a terrible moment that can never be outrun. The spirits of City Hall are not merely restless. They are residual manifestations of profound, unresolved shock, locked into the stone and metal. The structure, designed to house the living processes of democracy, continues to contain the precise instant that life was violently extinguished, repeating its terrible, silent history within the cold, unforgiving architecture. San Francisco Columbarium, San Francisco, the San Francisco Columbarium stands, an ornate island of the dead in a city that banished its cemeteries. Beneath the towering copper dome, the air is thick with the scent of aged marble and stagnant light, preserving the names of San Francisco's forgotten pioneers and children. When the city mandated the wholesale removal of all burials in the early 20th century, this specific structure was one of the few spared, cementing it as an architectural anomaly and a pressurized vessel for thousands of undisturbed, concentrated souls. The most persistent accounts center on auditory phenomena, often dismissed by day, but undeniable in the profound silence of night. Caretakers frequently report faint, disembodied whistling echoing through the vaulted halls long after closing, as if a spectral watchman continues his rounds. More chilling are the sightings in the lower levels, where the ambient temperature drops inexplicably below freezing. Regardless of the weather outside, it is here, near the niches of the city's early infant population, that visitors hear soft, incessant weeping, a sound that seems perpetually trapped within the stone walls. However, the horror is often unsettlingly tactile. Security logs detail multiple instances of alarms tripped by phantom impacts, sometimes coinciding with the appearance of a pale and its residual shadow seen darting through the central rotunda. Those who work late often report seeing the brass plaques and glass doors of the niches vibrate rapidly, not from external disturbance, but from an aggressive internal pressure. This vibration suggests that while the cremated remains are contained, the occupants are certainly not at rest. The silence inside the columbarium is not peaceful. It is merely the sound of thousands of entities holding their collective breath, patiently waiting for the moment they can exert enough force to finally break the glass. San Francisco Mint, San Francisco. The old mint stands on 5th Street like a granite fortress, its Greek Revival architecture masking the cold silence within. Even in the bustle of downtown San Francisco, a unique pressure settles around the building. A stillness heavy with the scent of aged copper and dust. Security patrols speak of sudden, localized temperature drops that defy the thermodynamics of the massive structure, especially within the deep vaults where millions in gold were once stored. It is a mausoleum built for money, and the dead who guarded it refused to leave their posts, forever bound to the cold stone. Known historically as the Granite Lady, the Mint was a cornerstone of American finance, surviving the catastrophic Great Earthquake and Fire of 1906, largely unscathed. This survival, however, came at a terrible cost. During the disaster, several key employees were reportedly trapped and burned alive in the lower levels, while defending the gold reserves from looters and the raging inferno above. The official history minimizes these fatalities, but the legend holds that those who died protecting the nation's wealth were never truly recovered or given proper rights. Their extreme devotion and violent end became a curse, binding them inextricably to the metal and stone. The documented activity centers primarily on the former assay office and the locked subterranean Vault 3. Maintenance staff frequently report the sound of rhythmic, metallic tapping, not the steady hum of machinery, but the sharp, echoing sound of a hammer striking stone, mimicking the desperate efforts of trapped men trying to signal their locations during the 1906 crisis. Paranormal investigators have recorded electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, that contain stern, whispered commands: secure the perimeter or stay with the safe. More disturbing are the sightings of a translucent figure, clad in 19th century attire, standing guard by the entrance to the abandoned administrative offices, his face perpetually soot-stained and severe. He is consistently seen gripping a phantom rifle, watching the hallways. The hauntings at the Old Mint are not the manifestations of a malevolent presence, but of institutional rigidity. The spirits here are employees, eternally bound by duty and the cold weight of the treasure they failed to save. They still patrol the silent halls and guard the empty vaults, a phantom security detail whose shift never ends. If one listens closely near the locked basement access points, you can sometimes hear the faint, metallic click of a turning key, forever securing a vault that holds nothing now but the bitter residue of sacrifice. That wraps up our countdown of San Francisco's top 15 haunted places. From Alcatraz's chilling cells to the whispers of the Queen Anne Hotel, we've explored the city's darkest corners. Which ghostly legend gave you the most shivers? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the supernatural. Thanks for watching, and sleep tight.